Yeah, hi, welcome to One People, One World. My name is Rabbi Yaakov David Cohen. I'm here with a very, very special guest, Mr. Zev William Langfan. Shalom, Mr. Langfan.
Shalom to you.
Please tell us a little about yourself, please.
Well, I grew up basically in the Washington Heights area of Manhattan. We were quite poor. Every penny was important. As a matter of fact, one of the first things that I did to make a couple of pennies was that we used to play softball every day.
Mm-hmm.
We had the first lights that were ever installed in New York, and I actually pitched the first game that was ever played under the lights in New York City.
Oh. And you stormed the beaches of Normandy.
Well,
that was many years later.
Not that many years
Right.
later. The time that was spent in Washington Heights were very happy years. I had a lot of friends, and we passed the time away nicely. There was no TV, so we used to tell jokes to each other, and we had basically a good time. We didn't travel anywhere. I never went to camp, but I enjoyed myself. And before I knew it, I was at college.
Okay.
That happened very quickly.
So tell us a bit about your parent. Your father came from Russia?
My father and mother were born in Lithuania.
Lithuania.
And my father was taken into the Russian army, and fortunately he was a very fine horseman, and he wound up in the cavalry. So when the Russo-Japanese War took place, he had a fairly easy time compared to the foot soldiers. When he came back, he decided that he had enough of Russia. Well, actually, it was Lithuania,
Right.
controlled by Russia. And he and my mother emigrated to the United States in 1906 and started a family. And I wound up the baby of 5. And I am the last of the Mohicans.
Really? Can I know you're 92 years old? Can I know it?
I
Bis 120, as we say. And keep on counting.
I was 92 in March of this
Mit
year.
Hashem. You look good, Baruch Hashem. Thank God. You look very good. So tell us a little about what's facing America today. You've been around for many years with Israel, with the Middle East.
Well, I have found that the atmosphere is very similar to the atmosphere that existed in 1938 when negotiations were taking place pertaining to the Sudetenland. I was 16 years old at the time.
This is going back in with the Nazi regime.
Yes. And I had been a reader of the New York Times for many, many years. As a matter of fact, in junior high school, the New York Times had a special arrangement with schools that for 5 cents a week, we had a delivery each day of the week.
Right.
Each weekday that we were in school, we had the New York Times. I was the collector for my class, and I didn't have to pay anything. So I had a free newspaper, the New York Times, which I used to read very thoroughly, particularly the news pertaining to Europe.
Right.
And so I had a pretty good feel for what was going on in Europe, though I was quite young at the time, and I could discuss issues with adults. And I kept on saying that when they were negotiating for the Munich Pact, that making a deal with Hitler was like making a deal with the devil. He never adhered to any agreements that Germany had made after the First World War. And why would he agree to have a peaceful relationship if, in fact, he was given the Sudetenland? And when they signed that Munich Pact, I felt that we were going to have a war, and very shortly. And sure enough, not even a year later, World War II began.
So, and you're saying today you feel the
atmosphere. I feel the attempt to force Israel to sever its relationship with important areas which protect the former Israel proper area, is putting Israel into a position where she would be very, very vulnerable to bombs and to missiles. Gaza is a perfect example. There have been thousands of missiles fired after Israel left, and there's nothing in the cards that would indicate that they would change their minds.
It's just bringing the borders closer.
Pardon me?
It just brought the border.
Yes,
closer.
it enabled. As a matter of fact, after Oslo, the amount of Israeli civilian deaths, average per year, was 105. Before the so-called peace agreement of Oslo, the average civilian deaths was 28. So there were four times as many Israeli civilian deaths as there were in the so-called peace years. So if that's illustrative of what's going to happen if they were to be adjacent to Israel, then I don't picture a long life for the state of Israel.
Which brings us really to that Israel is sort of the flank towards for the West in the Middle East, meaning if Israel goes, God forbid, goes.
Besides being important for the Israelis
and the Jewish people being a holy land, let me just make that clear that it's a godly given gift, and even if it's not strategic for the West, it's godly given, and we have no right to relinquish it.
Frankly, I don't go into that aspect.
Right. Okay.
I'm a document and a fact person.
Right. And I'm also a document and fact person, and that's why we're here talking to you.
So I spend most of my time reviewing documents and speeches, and
reviewing the actual core facts,
and arriving at conclusions predicated upon facts, not opinions.
Right. I just mentioned it, although it is a fact that Israel is strategically aligned and with the West and protects the West, but I just wanted to mention the mere fact that the Jewish people, the Torah is godly given, and it serves as a beacon for all to share, all to guide all ships into port, so to speak, and that even if it wasn't strategically necessary for Israel to align it to be there for the West. It's godly given, and we shouldn't really. But there's a physical side and a spiritual side. But let's talk about the physical side.
Well, now, my son,
Mr. Mark
Langfan, lectures quite a bit and writes substantial amounts of columns. And he has evolved a very interesting theory which one almost never hears. And that is that Israel is strategically important for the West. God forbid, if Israel were to disappear, there would be, give or take, 100+ million Muslims facing Southern Europe with not one barrier. Greece, Cyprus, Italy, southern France would all be vulnerable to Muslim attacks. The Mediterranean is a very easy stream to surmount, and it would require enormous amounts of expenditures for armament in order to protect Southern Europe.
So it is strategic to the West. You actually fought in Normandy, so you've lived. You've actually lived through World War I, World War II, and
I didn't live through World War I.
No, well, I mean, you were born in you were
a little bit after.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm just saying.
But in World War II,
right,
my group landed not too much after